Quintessentially in and of his time, he's a man of good timing like an actor. He is also a man who knows his time and knows the times. Yeah. That's another gimme. That's to make up for that economic one. Garber claims that Mortimer will never leave his wife until what? Too true. Name one way that Garber thinks Hal is made to resemble Christ.
He's like associates with the lower classes and the vagabonds.
Okay, that's one. Anyone else want to throw one out?
They'll let Jesus with prostitutes. Oh,
He's never been in the fall kingdom.
All right. Cool beard, also. What for Garber shifts the play from a comedy to a history? And then I don't want to talk about that economic one. Okay, so unfortunately we have the big boring history of England lecture, so you can understand what's I'm about to contextualize how history plays mean soap opera in the terms of history plays, because has anyone had like a vague rich aunt die in your family and gone to the funeral and seen what happens, what becomes of your family? You have?
No, I just have a question.
Okay.
Can I ask it? Oh,
absolutely.
Will these be online?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, this will be online, so only take notes of the jokes.
Not the ant, but like they all have like
Yeah, it gets pretty ugly, right? Yeah, it's I've been through this, and I stabbed a great ant in the throat with a pencil for an antique chair. So I didn't really. It was an uncle. But it doesn't, and then but the problem is so you've got it turns out just kind of one big happy extended family, more or less ruling all of Europe, and like different cousins and like the crazy hillbillies down in Spain and the uptight schizophrenic in Norway or whatever. So you'll see a lot of this going on in the history play. I batted around the idea of just doing the first tetralogy and the whole tetralogy in this class because Richard II is kind of a tragedy. This is kind of a comedy, and then the next two are kind of histories. But I didn't even know. Oh, they're just not. This is a good play, but those four aren't the four best plays. So anywho, so anyway, we're gonna go through this just to and we're gonna start with Richard II, and then we're gonna end with Queen Elizabeth. So this is Richard II. He became king at 10. You'll see this sort of thing happening a lot. He holds his scepter in an interesting way. And this is the beginning of the instability that's going on here. Is while he was reigning, he actually lost control of the government from a group of nobles seized control of the government for 2 years, and then he seized it back. And he actually was cool about it. He didn't kill everybody, but he learned to regret that. As you can see, he was tall, intelligent, and considered good looking, which is, I guess I did put some of the jokes, which is rare for royalty. Probably suffered from a personality disorder, and that's not as rare. We're going to see some craziness. Yeah.
So Richard I, Richard the Lionhearted?
I believe so, yeah.
And then how long before Richard II?
So it would be, it was Edward III, and then he was, I can guess, but I'd be guessing. So you can look it up. If I wasn't being recorded, I would just say 72 years. It was Edward III, and then it was, I'm not real sure. Although he might be an ancestor of mine. Yes, sir.
So how exactly did he lose control of the government for years? How does that even happen?
Yeah, it was well, you'll kind of see it how these things happen in the history play. It's complicated. What happens is factions of nobles, because the reason that the king's power is that just the nobles listen to him, but the nobles are the ones that raise armies, and this is a feudal society, and so the nobles could raise armies and more or less kind of just twist your arm into it's like, yeah, well, we don't want to do what you say. Oh, well, you got to do what I say. Well, you know what, I don't want higher taxes, and I can actually raise more troops than you can. So most of the time, the king would just back off. And but Richard II was a big divine right of kings guy, and so this helped if you actually believed that the king was hand chosen by God, and like the people under you actually thought that you were hand chosen by God, then they're a little bit less apt to try to bully you. But him losing the government shows that going on now, this divine right of kings thing wasn't holding on as well as Richard would like. Yeah.
And so then why did he exactly regret sparing the lives?
We'll get there. So when he gets back, he's only in control for 2 more years, and like I said, he didn't kill people, but he banished people, and the court just got more corrupt, and I mean, he should have Richard freed it and just killed everybody, and he'd probably still be king. But and then this is when you look at his behavior, it looks like he really sort of had a personality disorder, kind of one doesn't like to throw the term sociopath out there, but he's getting there. And then relevance to our play, he was deposed by Henry of Bolingbroke, also known as Bolingbroke, and because he exiled, and we'll talk more about this, he exiled Bolingbroke, and then while he was exiled, when his dad died, he disinherited him and seized his lands so he could get some more money, and then that's what pissed Bolingbroke off. So corrupt, decadent court financed by farming out king's lands, which you're not supposed to do, and allegedly, there's really nothing alleged about it. Occasional murders and impolitic land seizures. He was one of a great and proud line of effeminate kings that was very into fashion, completely obsessed with fashion, really, and at the same time a quote man's man. He, not much into his wife, hung out a lot with his fellow fashionistas, and just blew a lot of money on just parties and decorations and that sort of thing. And we talked about this divine right of kings, and so he was just he was just kind of arrogant, especially when he got back into power, and just wouldn't, it's just kind of infantile and just my way or the highway, and a lot of people got mad at him, and he was just completely indifferent to the support of the commoners. And then if we were reading Richard II, you would see how that blew up. So now we're to the play. You can tell because we switched to italics on Richard II. So at the opening, Thomas Mowbray and Henry Bolingbroke want to fight a duel because I forget which. I think Mowbray accused Bolingbroke of treason because Bolingbroke found out that Richard was responsible for the murder of this other nobleman, but he didn't really say it. But he accused him of that, and if somebody accuses you of that, because we're in a transition period, well, I guess we still kind of are, between the old honor society and the new society of law. So if somebody calls you a traitor, if somebody takes your hoe on a stroll and you don't stand up for yourself, you're out of the pimping game. I'm really into this metaphor. I'm just going to keep going with it. Actually, kind of makes sense considering the subject matter. So they're just about to fight, but Richard, he had a pang of conscience, and so he wouldn't let these guys fight it to the death because he knew what it was about, and so he stopped it. And plus, Bolingbroke's dad, John of Gaunt, was like his best buddy and kind of his mentor. And so he banishes Mowbray forever, And then Mowbray goes and dies in a crusade, and that's like the coolest thing. I mean, that's the best thing that can happen. So everybody's really jealous of him because they all want to go die in crusades too. And then and then this was the thing that really got him in trouble. And first he banishes Bolingbroke for 10 years, but then gets that little conscience, which you should never do if you're a king. If any of you are ever king, don't listen to your conscience. That's just that's going to be your usurpation. Yeah, that thing. And it's like, oh wait, let's just make it 6 years. And that's because Bolingbroke was actually right, but Richard couldn't admit it. But by giving him less time, he actually did sort of admit it, and then everybody kind of knew it. It's if we were spending more time on the play, I'd get more into it. So in the play, this makes Bolingbroke, the facade of the king kind of comes down to him. I mean, it says the king is just an effect of language, and language is just, like whoever hears you and how they hear you. So if how long a time lies in one little word. 4 lagging winters, should be F-O-U-R, lagging winters, and 4 wanton springs, and in a word such as the breath of kings. So it's just talking about the, just talk, and then 4 years comes in, and then he's like, wow, that'd be cool. I want some of that too. He also leases official government lands out to farmers, and which you don't do because you're supposed to be better than that when you're a king. We're not English, so we don't really understand the importance in tradition of being a gentleman and not working. Like up until I mean, some would say still, like if you have a job in England, you're not of the upper class, and you can be way richer than the defunct nobility that are going around, these little aristocrats, but you're still lower class. You can be a billionaire and you're still lower class if you have or ever had a job. But so Richard was leasing the lands out, and then so this made him look more like a landlord than a king. And then Gaunt says, "Landlord of England art thou, not king. Thy state of law is bondslave to the law." So that means so then if his tenants sue him, then they can sue him successfully, and that means the king is subject to the law, but the king is supposed to only be subject to God, right? And so this destabilizes the throne and makes it possible for someone, like I said, maybe I should just go through this and stop ad-libbing. Yeah, so the idea of rebelling against him without rebelling against God, becomes a real possibility. And then a note, and this is big, because Shakespeare had to be really careful in this, because Elizabeth was a big divine right of kings chick. I would be too if I was a king. But in practice, she's very Machiavellian. We may or may not talk about that later. But Shakespeare's company almost got in trouble. It turned out they didn't know anything about it, but a group of people that were planning to try and overthrow the Queen reached out a special performance from Shakespeare's company to get them all riled up, ready to overthrow the government. And Queen Elizabeth is said to have put to an acquaintance while she was watching the play, and Richard II. No, not that. So careful. So so we're still in the play because the play is more interesting than what happened in real life. But so Gaunt dies. Richard disinherits Bolingbroke and leaves him, as Ross in the play says, bereft, and is it gelded, of his patrimony. You know what gelded is? Yeah.
Term for castrations opposed.
Yeah. Okay. So so this makes the noble just like, if he's willing to do this, then we can no longer back this guy, and because I mean that's just really just smacking him in the face and saying, yeah, do something about it, punk. So he does something about it. He comes back and assembles a small army, and he claimed really until the end that all they wanted to do was reclaim his patrimony. But as he's coming along, everybody's just kind of joining with him. and the people, and there's some big scenes in this, the people are cheering him when he's coming in and kind of calling him king. And since, he's got to go up and he's got to basically punk the king anyway. And if you punk the king, he's not the king anymore, right? So you might as well take over the family. Now I'm thinking more of Godfather. And so that's kind of it's sort of a controversy. It does kind of seem to just happen in the play, though. It may be the result of his Machiavellian brilliance. Unlikely, says Crumbo. Bolingbroke's not really that smart. We'll see that. All right, and the nobles are excited to have Bolingbroke because Richard is a problem, and Bolingbroke, because he's not a legitimate king, he'll be a less powerful political force, they think. So they think that if and we see this come back because they're like, all right, well, he'll be indebted to us if we put him in power, so he won't be able to jerk us around the way that Richard has. And we talked about this. I put in a Cheney joke but didn't put in a Biden joke. Sorry, that doesn't mean I'm politically biased. I just forgot to put in the Biden joke. Forgive me. So Richard proves to be just as weak and easy to push over as everyone, I suppose I should have thought he would be. Bolingbroke imprisons the king, executes the four guys that were still his friend, charges of corrupting the king, and then reluctantly accepts the crown from the nobles. But Richard turns out to be more powerful than anybody realized. It's really a remarkable play. But so at first you're like rooting for him to die because he's just this arrogant prick, but jerk. Sorry. But as he goes along, and once he's not king anymore, he becomes kind of sympathetic, and then he starts doing reflection, and he becomes really, in my opinion, Shakespeare's first great tragic lyrical figure. He's so he engineers his own downfall. I know it's the boring lecture, but I used to take pictures and have a little page up, but I think I stopped doing that because it's kind of a jerk thing to do. But he realizes he'll never get his crown back, but he begins to use his powerful rhetoric and engineers his own tragedy, which puts a curse on the whole thing that comes afterwards. So officially, Bolingbroke, now Henry IV, gives him a full pardon, but he hints during the speech, it's like, sure would be nice if if something happened, so I wouldn't have to worry about him getting the throne back again. And then so somebody takes a hint and murders Richard. But this really kind of comes back and bites Henry in the proverbial butt, because so Henry condemns, banishes the murderer, but reveals some problems. That turns out that he's no better than Richard was. He's just as corrupt. And he's willing to murder too. This whole thing started, you'll remember, because of Bolingbroke, because of Richard's involvement in the murder of a nobleman. And if he was a real strong enough king, like if you're a real king, like Michael Corleone, wouldn't be like, oh, it was an accident that he got killed. You're like, yeah, I did it. What? And that's what he should have done. Like it's this pain of conscience and trying to hedge. Like it's just like, yeah, I killed him, man. What do you think I was gonna do? Not trying to hide behind the law and trying to hide behind rhetoric. Just being the man that Titania the Hippolyta wanted Theseus to be. That was freaking. Even if Richard needed to be deposed, Bolingbroke was not next in line for the throne. So this is the problem, right? So if a meteor came and hit Richard, Bolingbroke wasn't going to be king. This Mortimer character that we'll see in Henry IV was supposed to be. And though at the end, Henry was sort of right. He had a legitimate beef in the gangster world, but in the theological world, he still killed the divine right king. And God punishes just this sort of shenanigan. I didn't know that shenanigan could be singular. It can. Tradition has it that the whole War of the Roses was essentially punishment for Henry IV's actions. So there he is, Henry IV. He had a 14-year reign, seems longer. He was so remember this with the twins, the Shakespearean twins motif, which he interestingly does not use here, but he was the childhood playmate of Richard II. They were best friends. They went to camp together and stuff. Did participate in that short-lived rebellion for the 2 years, but was not punished. See why he would regret not killing everybody involved? Let that be a lesson. If you learn one thing from this class, when you're king, just kill your enemies. No conscience. May not have really murdered Richard II directly. His defense was that Richard just may have simply starved to death in prison. Which totally makes it okay. And then, and this rebellion has just become the thing now. There's just rebellions left and right. And so there was 3 major ones that he just barely managed to suppress while he was king, and then he died after a long time bout of some horrible disfiguring disease. Again, very common with these royalty people. And then we're not going to talk too much about the play because we're going to be talking about the play a lot. But he's an alternative to Richard II's divine right king. He's a politician. We've got a little language going on. I stole all courtesy from heaven and dressed myself in such humility that I did pluck allegiance from men's hearts, loud shouts and salutations from their mouths, even in the presence of the crowned king. So he knows what he's doing. He's your dramatic figure that's playing to the crowd, to the low people, and consciously getting effects. He knows that the kingship's just a performance. Richard realizes too late, because if he would have performed the way that he performed, he would have been probably, like I said, still king. And but Henry, knowing that, he's not comfortable with it. He's not being his own monkey. He's like, I'm not really a king. I'm not really a king. One of the my favorite sayings is from the French psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan. It says the only person that's crazier than the hobo that thinks he's a king is a king who thinks he's a king. So he's therefore too dependent on the nobles that helped him usurp the crown, which they knew. Northumberland, Hotspur, etc. All of his enemies in Henry IV were his allies in Richard II, and they won't let him forget it, nor should they. And he's got this stigma of regicide. And he remains kind of an ambivalent figure, in the annals, and historically speaking, and as a character. Henry V sort of got off the hook a little bit because at least he never actually killed a king, and so and probably with good sense, they're reluctant to punish children for things that their parents do, which was something that Richard had no scruples with. Oh yeah, I forgot. Richard would do that too. He would find some crime that somebody's grandpa committed and then seize the person's lands. All right, in such a world, David Scott cast, and this was the thing that you didn't have to read, because when I was looking at it, I realized that this paragraph was the only thing I really wanted you to know from it. And so I'd save you 60 pages of reading. In such a world, authority can be little more than the name which power gives itself. Henry's presence on the throne must trouble the familiar notions that kings rule by divine sanction, and that political disobedience is as much blasphemy as it is treason. In successfully deposing Richard, Henry exposes the insubstantiality of the traditional assertions of sacred majesty, and he now has no meaningful access to the powerful rhetoric of legitimacy that has surrounded the throne. So in other words, he can't say, hey, I'm the divine king, because they'd be like, actually, I helped you out. And this is the political reality that Hal inherits. And so he has to be a different kind of king and learn from both Richard II and his father. And there he is, Hal. Is that what you pictured? Yeah, that old rapscallion, handsome devil. only a 9-year reign, and you know he's the he's supposed to be like the best king ever, and he only reigned 9 years. Had a lousy haircut. And then so I mean this is a nice little twist, right? That Richard, you know, when he exiled Bolingbroke, he took Richard into his house and really bonded with him, and like took him to the park and, you know, threw the ball around and whatnot. So he was 16 in the real battle with Hotspur, and Hotspur was actually in historical reality Bolingbroke's age. And so he was disfigured because he got shot in the face with an arrow when he was 16, because he really wasn't the hero. He certainly didn't beat Hotspur in one-on-one combat. And he persistently quarreled with his father in political matters, and which gets us to the riotous youth persona was greatly exaggerated. He was heavily involved in politics since he was 14. He was the sheriff, and apparently a good one. He was 14. And then Falstaff, who was really Sir John Oldcastle, was just kind of a buddy of his, and actually, as we'll see, had puritanical needs, didn't drink, and apparently wasn't even fat. Henry VI. This is the Mrs. Hal's kid. Had a long reign. Not devastatingly handsome. I mean, this is the artist trying to flatter the king, right? War of the Roses started on his watch. So Henry V's big thing was he gained all these lands in France. England basically had France for a while, and he lost it all. And then the Duke of York of War of the Roses fame gains a lot of power here, and went completely bonkers. And thanks to Grandpa on his mom's side. Oh yeah, I forgot about this. The Grandpa on his mom's side had this recurrent thing that comes in French nobility. I think we've got one more king that has it, but he thinks that he's made of glass, which you don't really want your king to think.
So he thought he was made of glass when he was 6?
No, Henry VI didn't. He just went bonkers and was despondent. And I've got a bad feeling that I've got an editing problem because I remember stuff. Something is out of order here. Well, anywho. Yeah, so he ended up dying. Hopefully we'll get to it in the... Oh, okay, I know what's going on. So Edward IV was the next king. So there was another uprising. And of course, Henry VI couldn't do much about it because he was catatonically insane. And so Edward IV became king, reigned for 9 years. He was the son of that Duke of York that aforementioned that started the War of Roses, and he's the first Yorkist king of England. Tallest English monarch ever. So this guy Warwick, this behind-the-scenes guy, helped him overthrow Henry VI because he thought that he would just be his puppet king, because Warwick probably should have been the king. He was the most politically savvy, and he probably would have been a good king, but he just wasn't in line. So he was just sort of the behind-the-scenes dark, New World Order figure that put up the fake king. But Edward IV wasn't having it because he wanted to be his own king. So we get Henry VI back again. So Warwick switched sides, raised an army, overthrew the king for the second time in 9 years. Put Henry VI back. He was still
Crazy. He was crazy.
Yeah, he was still crazy. And he really was the puppet that Warwick wanted Edward to be. So the reason that they didn't kill him when he was deposed was because his son was actually kind of a badass, and they didn't want him to have the claim to the throne because it was easier dealing with this old weak chin guy that was rocking back and forth under his bed than his son. But when his son got killed, which happens I think in the next one, then they imprisoned him and died, and Warwick got killed too. Which brings us back again to Edward IV. So reigned again from 1471 to 1483. He was probably a good king. He was the good old days when your king would go out on the battlefield with you.
These guys aren't relatives.
Cousins. Yeah, they're all there's no different family involved here. It's just a matter of first or second cousins. Hence all of the inbreeding problems. Mostly a popular and able king. Probably deserved more of the golden age sort of king than Henry V's reign was supposed to be. And of his age, War of the Roses, he died of natural causes, which is no small accomplishment. So his son, Edward V. I think we have one of the third in here, but I don't think we have any of the fifths. Any of the fifths in here? I always wanted to be at the fifth. So reigned from April to June. So his trusted uncle Richard was named his guardian and protector, and also his son when Edward died, and Richard was always a really good friend of the family, great uncle, spent a lot of time with him. This was a no-brainer. But sure enough, somebody made public claims that his mother was in fact a hoe, and that they were not legitimate heirs to the throne because of that. And then so they're in legal limbo. So Richard, now King Richard III, for their own good, puts them in the Tower of London. Anyone know what the Tower of London is? Yeah. For their protection. You didn't want those guys to be kings anyway. But his younger brother would have been the next, had just as legitimate of a claim if just the older one died. So then we have good old Richard III. 2-year reign, but a marked one. He's a looker, as you can tell. And he was the disciple of the Warwick that we were just talking about that engineered the downfall of 2 kings. And in fact married Warwick's daughter, lucky gal. Killed Edward V's mother's family soon after Edward IV's death to make sure that there would be no rival shenanigans. So this is what you do. This is good Richard III policy. This is another one of Shakespeare's great trash tragedies. This is Richard III. And Richard III is just, for Shakespeare, just a cartoonishly evil king. And we're not even talking about Shakespeare's plays on it because he was really young when he did those. And he would just do that. And anytime there was trouble, he would drum up charges of treason or incest or anything, and then and everybody was scared of him, and he would just have the whole family killed. And then his old friend Buckingham tried a rebellion, crushed. The next rebellion suppressed him. He was the last English king to die on the battlefield, and he seems to have gone out like a G. Now, legend has it, you never know about these things. But so he rides out on the battlefield, kills like 6 people. The world champion jouster, he dehorses and thrusts a knife in his throat. Kills 2 more badasses. Almost gets to the next king who's going to usurp him, and then just gets surrounded and just overwhelmed by just too many people. And while he's like one arm still flapping on the ground, chopping up horse hoofs, and just he was like that. Have you seen Polanski's Macbeth? At the end, that's how I picture it. It was the end.
Wasn't he like disformed, Richard III?
Yeah.
Or is that like
Tradition
Shakespeare?
would have it that he was hunchbacked.
Okay.
He doesn't look too hunchbacked. I mean, it wasn't enough to keep him from being a badass. Yeah.
They found his bones last year and did DNA taxonomy of scoliosis.
Oh.
And they looked at his bones and stuff, and they came up with this, he had losses how much in battle he must have, because he had 2 previous head wounds.
You're gonna crush my going out like a G story.
No, I'm just saying,
Okay.
that's how he had it.
And he had scoliosis. What? He's one of my favorite kings. I like him. But he did die. So then we have Henry VII. kind of a mousy character. That's a fat gold chain, though. He defeated Richard III. I'm a big closet rap fan. It's bad. Don't tell anyone. Married Elizabeth of York, effectively ended the glory years of the War of the Roses. Some historians say the War of the Roses still continues. Some historians say the War of the Roses never happened. Everybody that's not an aficionado of hydroponics thinks that this was probably about the end of the War of the Roses. I only know that because I listened to that. Pretty boring reign. Nothing really to speak of, aside from some borderline illegal financial embezzling type activities that surfaced at the end of his career. Died of natural causes. Wuss. Now we're cooking. All right. Now see, that's what I'm talking about. Look at that gold chain. You notice where all the cool kings in their paintings are holding their scepters in suggestive ways. Had a pretty long reign. Dissolution of the monasteries, break from the Roman Catholic Church. But incidentally, he was except for the papal authority thing, he was still a practicing Catholic after his break. And he was also awarded Defender of the Faith from the Pope because of a theological treatise that he wrote. But ruled with absolute power, but he was also an author, a noted theologian, like I said. The Pope gave him props, and a composer. Became morbidly obese and is not always remembered with the greatest fondness. And then, the wife thing.
Yeah.
I think we're going to end early today. Henry's first wife, Catherine of Aragon, passed childbearing age without producing a male heir. Yeah, I don't know. You see, I just don't see those two together. They just. She seems pretty prim and proper. And what's that angular thing? I don't know. Are those bear shoulders? That's what I was looking at. I was seeing if that was a shirt or if she was just wearing that low cut of a shirt of a dress. I know nothing about early modern fashion. In Henry's defense, and I'm going to defend Henry because because nobody else will. We're just coming off the War of the Roses. He's not getting a male heir. Do you really want to put the country through this again? If you can just have a solid, reliable, unchallengeable male heir, then no problem. Everything's going to be okay, right? And so he needs a son. Not in Henry's defense. Was his decision to pursue the famously charismatic sister of his wife's lady-in-waiting. So his lady-in-waiting was Mary, who he was having an affair with at the time. And then, but met the bewitching man, and then the Protestant version of this is the bewitching and also very, very prudent, and refused to be his mistress, and it made him go insane to the point that he would pursue with the break from Rome because of her purity. Her purity did it.
Is that the real story?
Hell no! Look at her. Nah, this is No, she wielded her sexuality like an Uzi. So Anne's feistiness was hot in a potential mistress, but was trying in a wife. Her irritability and violent temper, period, because I spent a ridiculous long amount of time making this PowerPoint, by the way. It's not what I was looking for in PowerPoint. She might have faked a pregnancy. Some people think that they never did it. That's intriguing. Some people think he did it with everybody else except for Henry VIII. Interesting. But anyway, there was not a male heir was not forthcoming. So within a few months of their marriage, Henry picked up this hot little number as a side piece, or it might have been her sister. No parentheses on the other side needed. That's great when you go down in history. It's like you might have been the mistress of the king, or it might have been your sister. Hey, you know what? Let's give Henry his due. It's both of them, man. He's a party guy. So the next year, Henry got injured in a jousting tournament. What was that fat fool thinking? So Anne allegedly so upset that she miscarried a male child. Henry got upset too and claimed that he only married her because witch bewitched him. And then had Anne and 5 men, including her brother, were charged with treason and incest. All these guys were allegedly trying to and or accomplishing having sex with her, including her brother, and the whole batch of them were executed. I like to think that it was true. His new mistress, Jane Seymour, would be his next wife. She did produce a son, but tragically she died in childbirth. Henry always considered her to be his true wife. She's definitely not wearing a shirt under that. At least I don't think. Does anybody know about fashion? Yeah, for a little bit. The many merry wives of Henry. So, just on the basis of this portrait, Henry agreed to wed Anne Cleves. When she showed up, she was not as hot as one could hope. Henry called her the Flanders mare. And the God, you know, it's just such a shame because it's Queen Elizabeth's dad, so Shakespeare can't really do the play that needs to be done on this. I mean, my kingdom for a real Henry VIII Shakespeare play. I mean, that'd be something. So this actually doesn't turn out to be doesn't turn out bad. She doesn't have to sleep with Henry. Puts her up in a nice place and considers her his sister. So this is the next one, Catherine Howard, who happened to be Anne's cousin in waiting. He's really into the maid thing. Became Henry's next wife. Now he was really into her. Like he was just he would bend over all kinds of ways for her. And oh, look at those. You can just tell. It's amazing how you can tell from these pictures. But she really did have affairs. I mean, she was just like, because we all know from Mimetic Desire what happens when the king really loves you. Even if he's not covered with big pus bubbles and weighing like 490 pounds. And so she was executed, and her 2 former lovers were also executed with her. May they all burn in hell.
Was he morbidly obese by this time after?
You had pus bubbles?
Yeah, the pus bubbles were here. And then so this is finally his true soulmate. A wealthy widow would be Henry's last wife. She was a religious reformer. Henry was not, and they had some squabbles, but she had enough sense to say, whatever. I'm going to go put on this fat gold chain, and you can go ahead. And she managed to outlive her husband, and that's it.
What happened to her?
Yeah, she just chilled. It was fine. It was all groovy. And then so this is the young Edward VI. Had a glorious almost 6-year reign. Once again, look where he holds his scepter. You can't make this stuff up. Well, I guess you could. Never really reigned because he never reached maturity. But in spite of that, or now this is the country's an economic problem, social unrest, yada yada yada, riots, rebellion, religious reform, madness.
How old was he?
I think he was just, he didn't reach maturity. That would have been late, so he must have been, he's probably about 13 in this picture, and he made it to 15. Yeah, fell ill and died at 15. I just got sick and died. It happened. In spite of the fact that he was almost as famous as Hal is of being reformed. He was that famous of a suckler, which was a sign of health in infants. Lady Jane Grey. Hell of a ring. Handpicked by Edward VI because he was concerned about the Edward VI was raised Protestant. He was actually a real Protestant instead of just get this Pope out of my way. He's standing between me and my women. And so Edward VI fudged some papers, said he passed an act of Parliament. Turned out didn't really. Hence the short reign. Weak claim to the throne, and was executed in 1554. Yeah, see, they learned their lesson. Like they weren't gonna. They're not doing the Richard II thing and forgiving their. Now that. Another one of my favorites.
These are supposed to be good pictures.
Yeah, right? I mean, this is the thing, right? I mean, you never know. I mean, she... Another one of my favorites. Like me some Mary Wins. Daughter of the first wife, Catherine. Where she gets that facial expression. Successfully deposed Jane Grey. Restored Roman Catholicism, famously burning about 280 dissenters at the stake along the way. And if you want us to get stuff done, dissenters, burn them. By the way, I'm running for president in 2016, and I thought this was. I've got it all planned out. You'll see. It's going to be awesome. Died of the flu, as many of us will this semester. Good old Lizzie. How about talk about make you take your little gold medallion back to mommy. Reigned 1558 to 1603. Restored Protestantism, less militantly, killed relatively few people. Never married, last Tudor monarch. Quirky, feisty, and cunning. Ruled as a kind of sonnet lady. Watched Shakespeare's plays, which is probably the only reason why you've heard of her. So yeah, I just want to take a moment and I want you to really look at this outfit. Look at all the little bows. She was actually, she's really crazy. There was more to her ring in this. This is the famous Spanish Armada picture. I mean, that's sort of a big thing. They defeat the Spanish Armada by all accounts a miracle, but not really because stuff happens. I feel like she's kind of too big of a thing to discuss in this forum along with her interesting for. But I mean, very much Anne Boleyn's child and Henry VIII. You can see it in her. She's really got nothing to do with Henry IV Part 1. But she watched it. And she liked it, her proclamation. She actually sent a personal message to Shakespeare after watching Henry IV Part 1, requesting more Falstaff. Like it's false. Questions? Yeah. No. No. She did not. I don't think that she thought that she was ever going to die. She was really into the, I mean, she really self-consciously molded herself as a sonnet lady, and kind of, I think that she thought that she was sort of immortalized. She's, I just think she's just insane. But Professor Brown went to a Elizabeth thing at the in New York. I think it was at the Met, and brought me back a little tablet with this picture on it and a eraser that says "out, damaged spot, out." And I really like the eraser. Any other questions? Yeah. James, and he's fun too. We just got to the point of I think we're going to talk a little bit about James, but he's sort of a return of the old style Richard II. Like he was really he was as openly gay as you can be back then. He was a real fun guy. Oh, I've got your old quizzes. Kelsey, would you ever come back? Kelsey! Oh, goodness. Audrey with the B. Cynthia! Annie.
I didn't hear you.
No, I have books.
Okay, good, you're back.
Yeah.
You said? Okay.
Alright.
Jamie? Jordan? Jordan? Cliff? Jonathan? Mike? How do you get your hair to stay like that?
Don't watch it.
Andy?
Huh?
Okay, I'm going to try that.
Let's see it.
Megan? I've got to get a haircut. I've got to take one shower for the rest of the semester. I have an important thing on spring break, but I won't until then. Laura? Okay. Laura? Rodney? Rachel R? Aubrey with a B? Blake?
It's an email. I Snapchatted because they sent me an email today. They said it was fine. 2 days ago. So I didn't show them I didn't show the date when it's sent. Here. I'm not coming.
Katie? So both on the others and then.
Yeah, I think you guys need to start with that. Because the baby's probably like
Eliana?
It's like women.
Robert?
Yeah.
Yes, it's Robert.
Emma?
It's like baby.
Kelsey? Sherman? Haley? Ashley? Ashley? William? Kaplan? Rachel Ann? Schmidenberg? Oh yeah, Marty. Sure. Julia. Very good. Lincoln. So really, all semester? You're lying. That's Aquanet, man. You're welcome. Feel better. Just kick your, if you kicked your roommate in the side of the knee.
I like did a whole bunch of things in my house now.
Yeah, hey, I'm with you.
So yeah, I said it was okay.